My ex called me heartless when I wouldn't fight for her, saying, "You're not a good person. A good person would be happy for me finding my soulmate." 6 months later, she came crawling back and I said, "Claire, you made your choice. Now live with it." The words came out calm, measured, completely devoid of emotion. Standing there in that upscale hotel lobby where she'd ambushed me at my company's annual gala, watching her face crumble as the reality hit her, I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. 6 months ago, those tears might have moved me. Tonight they were just water running down the face of a stranger. "Leo, please," she whispered, reaching toward me with trembling hands. "I made a terrible mistake. Liam wasn't who I thought he was. He used me, discarded me like I was nothing. I realize now that what we had was real, that you were the one who truly loved me." I stepped back, my movements deliberate and controlled. The analytical mind that had served me so well in software development was running full calculations now, processing every micro-expression, every desperate inflection in her voice. This wasn't love or regret speaking. This was panic. The panic of someone who had gambled everything on the wrong horse and was now facing the consequences. "You're right about one thing," I said, adjusting my cufflinks with the same precision I brought to debugging complex code. "What we had was real, past tense. You took something real and threw it away for a fantasy. That was your choice to make, and you made it." The shock in her eyes was genuine. She'd expected me to be the same Leo who used to drop everything when she called, who would rearrange his entire weekend if she wanted to try some new restaurant or art gallery. The Leo who had spent 3 years being her emotional support system, her rock, her safe harbor, while she played at being a free spirit. But that Leo had died the night she told me I wasn't good enough, that I should be happy she'd found someone better. The man standing here now was someone entirely different. What Claire didn't understand, what she'd never bothered to learn in our 3 years together, was that my calm, steady exterior masked a mind that approached problems with systematic precision. My work in software architecture wasn't just a job. It was a way of thinking. Break down complex systems, identify failure points, optimize for efficiency, eliminate vulnerabilities. When she'd delivered that final cruel blow about me not being a good person, she'd inadvertently triggered the same analytical process I used to solve million-dollar technical problems. The truth was, I'd seen this coming for months. My colleague Marcus had shown me those Instagram posts of Claire with Liam before she'd ever said a word to me about being unhappy. While she was building her narrative about needing excitement and passion, I was already documenting evidence of her infidelity. Screenshots, timestamps, even a few photos I'd taken of her phone when she'd left it unlocked on our kitchen counter. I hadn't gathered this evidence out of paranoia or jealousy. I'd done it because 15 years in tech had taught me that systems fail in predictable ways, and people are just biological systems with their own failure patterns. Claire's pattern was clear. Emotional manipulation followed by abandonment, then panic when the new situation didn't provide the security she'd taken for granted. My strategic advantages weren't immediately obvious, but they were substantial. First, my financial position was far stronger than Claire had ever realized. While she'd been spending her marketing coordinator salary on designer clothes and expensive brunches, I'd been quietly building a portfolio worth just over $400,000. My senior architect's salary of $165,000 had allowed me to max out my 401k contributions, build an emergency fund worth 18 months of expenses, and invest aggressively in both index funds and individual tech stocks that my industry knowledge had helped me identify early. Second, my professional network was extensive and influential. 12 years at 3 different software companies had connected me with CTOs, VPs of engineering, and startup founders across the industry. When Claire's friend Emily had tried to pressure me into taking Claire back, she'd unknowingly revealed that Claire was now working at a small marketing agency that depended heavily on tech company contracts. A few casual conversations with the right people could make Claire's professional life very complicated. Third, I had the one thing Claire had never developed: emotional self-sufficiency. While she'd been using me as her emotional regulation system, I'd been building genuine independence. I could cook, clean, manage finances, handle paperwork, maintain friendships, and navigate life without needing constant validation or support. Claire, despite all her talk about being a free spirit, had never learned to be truly alone. Most importantly, I had time. Claire was operating from a position of desperation, making emotional decisions under pressure. I could afford to wait, plan, and execute with precision. Every move she made revealed more information about her current situation and growing vulnerability. The systematic approach I developed started with complete information gathering. Through mutual friends and careful social media monitoring, I'd built a comprehensive picture of Claire's situation. Liam's reputation as a serial manipulator had been well documented by his previous victims. His financial instability was evident from his constant requests for loans and his inability to maintain steady income. His pattern of love bombing followed by emotional abuse was so consistent that I'd been able to predict the timeline of Claire's discard within a 2-week window. I'd also consulted with my lawyer, Janet Clearwater, who specialized in both family law and contract disputes. While Claire and I had never married, we'd lived together for 18 months and had joint accounts, shared lease agreements, and commingled assets. Janet had helped me systematically separate my financial exposure and document Claire's abandonment of shared responsibilities. More importantly, she'd identified several potential legal approaches if Claire tried to claim any rights to assets I'd acquired during our relationship. My accountant, Douglas Hensley, had helped me restructure my investments to minimize any potential claims and maximize my financial independence. We'd moved my emergency fund to a high-yield savings account in my name only, transferred my stock options to a separate brokerage account, and established clear documentation of which assets were mine before the relationship started. Even my therapist, Dr. Rebecca Foster, had become part of my strategic team. Her expertise in narcissistic abuse patterns had helped me understand Claire's manipulation tactics and develop emotional defense mechanisms. More practically, her documentation of the psychological impact of Claire's abandonment provided potential evidence if legal action became necessary. The methodical preparation had taken 4 months of careful work. Every step was documented, every decision was made with clear strategic purpose, and every contingency was planned for multiple scenarios. When Claire's inevitable return occurred, I would be ready not just emotionally, but legally, financially, and strategically. The beauty of my approach was its passive nature. I didn't need to actively pursue revenge or consequences for Claire. I simply needed to maintain my boundaries and let her own poor decisions create the natural consequences. Every attempt she made to reestablish contact revealed her growing desperation and weakening position. Her initial text messages had been tentative, testing whether I'd maintained the emotional connection she'd counted on. When I didn't respond, she'd escalated to calls. When I blocked her number, she'd recruited mutual friends to pressure me. When that failed, she'd gotten my mother involved, a move that had actually backfired by revealing her willingness to manipulate family relationships. Each escalation had provided me with valuable information about her current situation while strengthening my position. The mutual friends who'd pressured me on her behalf had inadvertently revealed that she was isolated, financially struggling, and emotionally unstable. My mother's report of their conversation had confirmed that Liam had not just abandoned her emotionally, but had also left her responsible for debts they had accumulated together. The final phase of Claire's descent had been both predictable and satisfying to observe. Liam's public abandonment of her for his new muse had been documented across social media, creating a permanent record of her humiliation. His pretentious post about needing to follow his artistic truth had used almost identical language to Claire's breakup speech to me, an irony so perfect it seemed orchestrated. Claire's response to this abandonment revealed everything about her character. Instead of accepting responsibility for her choices or working on genuine self-improvement, she'd immediately begun seeking someone to rescue her from the consequences of her actions. The desperation in her recent messages showed that she viewed me not as a person she'd wronged, but as a resource she needed to reclaim. Tonight's ambush at my company gala represented her final strategic mistake. By confronting me in a professional setting, where I was clearly thriving, she'd inadvertently provided the perfect stage for my definitive rejection. My colleagues could see the contrast between my success and her desperation. My new girlfriend, Jessica, could witness firsthand the type of person I'd moved beyond. Jessica herself represented the ultimate validation of my strategic approach. A senior product manager at a competing firm, she was everything Claire had never been. Emotionally stable, financially independent, intellectually curious, and genuinely supportive of my goals. Our relationship was built on mutual respect and shared values rather than the codependent dynamic Claire had created. "Leo, I'm begging you," Claire continued, her voice breaking. "I know I hurt you, but I was confused. I didn't know what I wanted, but losing you, losing what we had, it's shown me that you were my person all along. Can't we try again? Can't we build something new?" I looked at her carefully, noting the designer dress that was probably purchased with credit she couldn't afford, the desperate way she kept glancing at Jessica, the tremor in her hands that suggested she wasn't taking care of herself. Everything about her appearance confirmed the intelligence I'd gathered about her deteriorating situation. "Claire," I said, my voice carrying the quiet authority I used when explaining complex technical concepts to executives. "You're asking me to rescue you from consequences you created. That's not love. That's not even friendship. That's just wanting someone else to fix your problems." The words hit her like physical blows. She actually stumbled backward, gripping the edge of a nearby table for support. I'm not. I love you, Leo. I realize that now. What Liam and I had wasn't real, but what we had was. Please just give me another chance to show you." "You had 3 years to show me," I replied. "Instead, you spent months planning your exit strategy, publicly humiliating me with your affair, and then tried to make me feel guilty for not celebrating your betrayal. You revealed exactly who you are, and I believed you." Jessica moved closer to me, not out of possessiveness, but offering quiet support. The contrast between her calm presence and Claire's desperate energy was stark and deliberate. I'd chosen to bring Jessica to this event partly because I'd suspected Claire might attempt something like this. 3 years of my life," I continued, "I spent accommodating your whims, managing your emotions, providing stability while you played at being unpredictable. You took that security for granted until it was gone. Now you want it back, not because you value me, but because you've learned that the alternative is harder than you expected." The truth was devastating because it was so clearly accurate. Claire's face cycled through recognition, denial, and defeat as she processed what I was saying. This wasn't the emotional Leo she remembered, the one who would analyze her feelings and offer solutions. This was someone who had analyzed her behavioral patterns and found them systematically destructive. "The person you're remembering," I said gently, "the one who would drop everything for you, who would forgive anything, who would take responsibility for your happiness, that person doesn't exist anymore. You killed him when you told him he wasn't good enough. What you're looking at now is who I became after I stopped trying to be enough for someone who didn't value what I offered." Claire's tears were flowing freely now, but they didn't move me. I'd seen her cry strategically too many times to be affected by the display. These weren't tears of genuine remorse. They were tears of frustration that her usual manipulation tactics weren't working. "I don't want to hurt you," I continued, "but I won't pretend that what you did was acceptable or that time has somehow erased the fundamental incompatibility between us. You need someone who will tolerate being treated as disposable. I need someone who values consistency and loyalty. We want different things from relationships." The finality in my voice was unmistakable. This wasn't a negotiation or an emotional argument. This was a strategic decision being communicated with professional clarity. Claire seemed to finally understand that no amount of tears or pleading would change the outcome. "So that's it," she whispered. "Everything we had means nothing to you now?" "Everything we had," I corrected, "meant nothing to you then. I'm not the one who declared it worthless. I'm not the one who walked away for someone more exciting. I'm just the one who learned to live without it." As the words settled between us, I watched Claire's face transform one final time. The desperation faded, replaced by a hollow recognition of complete defeat. She'd played her last card and discovered that the game had been over long before she'd realized she was losing. The consequences of Claire's choices had been mounting systematically throughout our 6 months apart. Liam's abandonment had left her responsible for the lease on an expensive apartment she couldn't afford alone. His pattern of borrowing money had depleted her savings and damaged her credit. The social media documentation of their relationship and its dramatic end had created professional embarrassment at her marketing agency. More significantly, her manipulation of mutual friends during her campaign to win me back had isolated her from our former social circle. Emily had grown tired of being used as a messenger service. My mother had been offended by Claire's attempt to manipulate family relationships. Even Claire's own sister had begun questioning her pattern of relationship destruction. The financial pressures were becoming critical. Without Liam's promised contributions to their shared expenses, Claire was facing potential eviction from the upscale apartment she had insisted on leasing. Her credit card debt from trying to maintain her lifestyle without adequate income was approaching dangerous levels. The marketing agency where she worked was struggling financially, making her position increasingly precarious. Most devastatingly, her reputation within our professional community had been damaged by the public nature of her relationship drama. Denver's tech and marketing scene was smaller than most people realized, and word of her affair and subsequent abandonment had spread through interconnected professional networks. Several potential job opportunities had quietly evaporated when hiring managers had heard unflattering stories about her personal conduct. Jessica and I left the gala early, not out of discomfort, but because the encounter had provided such perfect closure to that chapter of my life. In the car, Jessica asked me if I was okay, and I realized I genuinely was. Not just okay, but better than I'd been in years. She seemed so desperate, Jessica observed. Part of me almost felt sorry for her. That's because you're empathetic, I replied. But desperation isn't the same as remorse. She's not sorry for what she did to me. She's sorry it didn't work out the way she planned. 6 months later, the final updates on Claire's situation reached me through the same network that had been monitoring her decline. She'd been evicted from her apartment and moved back with her parents in Colorado Springs. The marketing agency had laid her off during budget cuts, and she was working at a retail job while trying to rebuild her finances and credit. Liam, predictably, had moved on to his next victim and showed no interest in Claire's subsequent struggles. His pattern of love bombing, financial exploitation, and emotional abandonment continued with a young artist who had her own trust fund to support his lifestyle. Claire's attempts to rebuild her social connections had been largely unsuccessful. Too many people had witnessed her treatment of me and her subsequent manipulation attempts. Her reputation for relationship drama and emotional instability had made her a liability rather than an asset in social situations. Most telling, her social media presence had shifted from a confident artistic soul to generic inspirational quotes about healing and growth. The authentic Claire, selfish, manipulative, emotionally dependent, had been replaced by a carefully curated image designed to attract new sources of support and validation. Meanwhile, my life had continued expanding in every direction that mattered. The promotion to principal architect that I'd been working toward during my relationship with Claire had come through, along with a salary increase to $195,000. My investment portfolio had grown to over $600,000. Jessica and I had moved in together after 8 months of dating, a decision based on genuine compatibility rather than romantic impulse. Our relationship operated as a partnership between equals rather than the caretaker dynamic Claire had established. We split expenses proportionally to our incomes, made decisions together, and maintained our individual identities while building something stronger together. The contrast between my current life and what I'd had with Claire was instructive. Every aspect of my existence had improved after removing someone who had treated me as a convenience rather than a partner. My stress levels had decreased, my productivity had increased, and my long-term planning had become more ambitious and optimistic. Dr. Foster had helped me understand that Claire's attempt to reconnect wasn't about love or even nostalgia. It was about supply. People with narcissistic tendencies require constant external validation to maintain their self-image, and losing a reliable source of that validation creates desperate attempts to reestablish the connection. My refusal to engage had forced Claire to confront the reality that I was no longer available as her emotional support system. The strategic lessons from this experience had applications far beyond romantic relationships. Recognizing manipulation tactics, maintaining strong boundaries, documenting important interactions, and building independence in all areas of life had strengthened every aspect of my personal and professional existence. Claire had taught me, inadvertently, that the most effective response to someone who treats you as disposable is to become genuinely indifferent to their presence in your life. Not angry, not hurt, not seeking revenge. Simply uninterested in their attempts to reestablish relevance. Today, nearly 18 months after Claire's desperate attempt to reconnect, I rarely think about her, except as a cautionary tale about the importance of choosing partners who share your values about loyalty and commitment. Jessica and I are planning to buy a house together next year, a step that represents the kind of stable future Claire had claimed to want, but had been unwilling to build through consistent daily choices. Claire remains in Colorado Springs, still posting inspirational quotes about healing and growth, still struggling with the consequences of choosing excitement over stability. Liam continues his pattern with new victims. Emily and our other mutual friends have moved on to healthier relationship dynamics. Marcus, my colleague who first showed me those Instagram posts, has been promoted to senior developer and remains a trusted friend who occasionally updates me on industry gossip, though Claire's name rarely comes up anymore. The dent in the wall from trying to move furniture into our shared apartment, a small imperfection that had once represented our shared future, had been repaired within a week of her departure. Unlike the damage to our relationship, physical walls can actually be fixed when someone cares enough to do the work properly.